Good morning. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to today's AUSA Coffee Series featuring General Matthew McFarlane, Commanding General of 1st Corps. And we have a very special guest moderator today. That's Dr. John Nagl, who is a professor of warfighting studies at the U.S. Army War College. I'm Alex Brody. I'm the director of meetings at AUSA, and it's great to welcome you all back to our headquarters today for this great discussion. As always, there will be a Q&A session towards the end of it, so I ask that you start thinking of all of your questions now, and we'll see if we can give our guest speaker today a good couple challenging questions from the audience. I do want to thank our 4-star sponsor, General Dynamics and Leonardo DRS, as well as our 2-star sponsor, Leidos, for their support of the coffee series. Let's give them a big round of applause, please. Simply put, we can't do what we do without the great support from our industry partners. If anyone in the room is interested in being a sponsor at any of our events at AUSA, please connect with Emily Call. She is our sponsorship manager, who I think many of you know already. She's here out in the lobby for most of the morning, so please connect with Emily, and she'll tell you all the great benefits of being a sponsor at any of our events. We appreciate the presence of the general officers and command sergeants major joining us this morning as well. It's always great to have you join us. And I'd also like to acknowledge the congressional staff that are here with us today. Your efforts on behalf of the Army, soldiers, and families is greatly appreciated. All right, with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my boss, the Vice President for Membership and Meetings. Please put your hands together for Brigadier General Jack Haley.
Well, thank you and good morning. Pardon our construction out front. We're redoing the front of the building due to some water damage, but it should be manageable. But I think we have a fantastic group here to listen to our distinguished speakers, and we're doing something a little different than we have in some of our previous coffee series. Usually, our moderator is someone from the AUSA leadership: General Brown, General Smith, myself, SMA Daly. We decided to expand our aperture here, and we brought in Dr. John Nagl. So I think the discussion here will be fantastic. So we're really honored to have both these gentlemen with us. Let me do some brief introductions. Lieutenant General Matthew McFarlane is the Commanding General of 1st Corps, a native of Burke, Virginia. He commissioned as an infantry officer in 1992 after graduating from James Madison University. Over his career, he served in Ranger, Airborne, and Mechanized Infantry formations, leading soldiers in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. He has commanded from company to corps level, holding key leadership positions across the United States, Italy, Alaska, and Hawaii. As a general officer, he has served in roles including Deputy Commanding General of 1st Corps and USAPAC, Commanding General of the 4th Infantry Division, and Senior Military Assistant to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. He holds 3 master's degrees and completed MIT's Seminar 21 Fellows Program. His awards include the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, 3 Bronze Star Medals, and the Combat Infantryman Badge with Star. Dr. John Nagl is a professor of warfighting studies in the Department of Military Strategy, Planning, and Operations at the Army War College. A West Point graduate and retired armor officer, Dr. Nagl served in tank units in combat in Operation Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He attended Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar, earning his master's and doctoral degrees in international relations. At the Army War College, he is the lead faculty instructor and seminar historian. He is a member of the Board of Advisors at the Foreign Policy Research Institute in Philadelphia and at the Center for a New American Security in Washington, and a fellow of the Irregular Warfare Initiative. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General Matt McFarlane and Dr. John Nagl.
So General Haley, thanks for those kind words. I think we'd be remiss not to start by noting what an important week it is for the United States Army, 250 years of serving our nation, creating our nation, and then accomplishing extraordinary things. And AUSA is very lucky, General Haley, to have you and its leadership team who personally experienced so much of the Army's 250-year history. And I particularly enjoyed hearing the stories about Valley Forge this morning over breakfast. So, sir, thank you for that. And a terrific privilege for me to be here. at this organization for which I have so much respect, and with an Army leader of such repute. So, General McFarlane, we're going to start easy, and the questions are going to get harder as we go.
It's good.
That's
State school educated. I'm ready for that. That's right.
I tell the students I run the oral comprehensive exam program at the Army War College, and I tell them that the questions are getting harder. We're trying. It's like pole vault, right? We're trying to see how high you can go. If the questions are getting easier, that means the exam is not going well. And if we get down to, can you name any of the classes you took this year? What is your name? Right? That means it's going wrong. But so we're prepared to ask harder questions. So, General McFarlane, the Pacific is big. It's big.
Smidge. Yes.
It's big.
Yeah.
How does First Corps, not I Corps, but First Corps, ensure it remains ready to lead joint and multinational operations across the Indo-Pacific, given the geography and the extraordinary rise to great power status of China?
Well, first, to your point about how big the Pacific is, John, what I appreciate about the Army's turn towards focusing on the Pacific, the courses you're leading, the war gaming you're doing there at the War College, that environment is something our Army isn't used to. After 20 years in the Central Command AOR, the focus on Europe here recently with the European Defense Initiative, and getting people back in to understand the extended lines of communication. There's a lot of water there, but there's also a lot of land. If you look at a map, for instance, the Philippines is maybe 10 to 15 green dots in the first island chain there between Taiwan and moving down towards Indonesia. There's actually 7,600 islands in the Philippines, 2,000 of which are inhabited by human beings. So the dynamics in the Pacific isn't just big, but it's non-contiguous, and it is an all-domain, certainly a joint theater, because of the amount of water that takes to get there in between the pieces of land there. And we stay focused on learning and understanding the environment throughout our campaign. Operation Pathways is our campaign to continuously work with partners and allies and build capability with them, help them build capability, and rehearse with the joint team as we do that throughout the year. So we do like 40 exercises as part of our pathways, and they're rehearsals. And we do it with about 20 different partner nations in the Pacific. And so unlike Europe, where you have NATO and that drives the center of gravity for European nations, in the Pacific, we don't have a NATO structure. We have a lot of bilateral treaties, 5 in the Pacific, and agreements as we work with like-minded nations to drive a free and open Indo-Pacific as we work as part of Indo-PACOM. But the land power network, our relationships with the other countries, they're incredibly important. And so the understanding of that being forward throughout most of the year, like right now, we have 5,000 First Corps soldiers west of the international date line in and around the First Island chain across 9 different countries. We have a brigade combat team that's in the process of redeploying from Korea, that's on the Korean rotational force that we rotate every 9 months. And then we also have a brigade combat team from the 25th Infantry Division in the Philippines, just finishing up a large, what we call Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center exportable rotation, where they worked alongside a Philippine Army brigade as well. And so as we do those exercises are key to operating in the area or in the First Island chain in that environment. Getting there is another treat within itself. 10,000 kilometers between, approximately 10,000 kilometers between the Port of Tacoma and the First Island chain. And so the power projection rehearsals we get when we deploy brigades to Korea, or we launch brigades from Hawaii into the Philippines, like we've recently done, are really important aspects of the fight. As you know, the tyranny of distance is real, as you opened up with. We're conscious of that, and we're continually working with the joint team to think through what does that mean to things as we operate and potentially have to fight in the Pacific.
I was out at USERPAC last summer helping teach the Theater Army Staff Course, right as General Flynn was relinquishing command to my classmate, General Clark, and learned a lot about this Pacific Pathways program. And I encourage everybody in the room to spend some time realizing how the Army practices deterrence, and combat readiness both at the same time with that program. So I was really delighted there and learned a lot. You mentioned the contrast between the European theater and the Pacific theater. When I was growing up, largely before you entered the service, I don't look like it, but I'm in fact older than General McFarlane. The worst part about teaching at the Army War College is that the colonels get younger every year. Right? When I was growing up, we only had one enemy, one pacing challenge, and that was, of course, the Soviet Union. When they quit, the world got a little more unsettled. But now, we thought the 90s were bad, and then, of course, the 20 years of irregular warfare you mentioned. But now we face both a pacing challenge in China and an acute challenge with a Russia that has continues the largest war in Europe since World War II. How does I-Corps balance the twin responsibilities of being ready to engage in both theaters? I know you primarily Pacific. But.
Yeah, certainly as we are assigned to U.S. Army Pacific and Indo-Pacific Command, we focus on the Pacific, but we are, our part of deterrence is making sure we have capable, credible combat formations that adversaries do know that the cost will be too high if they want to drive towards crisis or conflict. And so we stay focused on that with pathways, but we know we've got to be ready to operate around the world. And right now, First Corps units are doing that. We've got units in Europe, we've got units in the Central Command AOR right now, and we've got units supporting the southern border. And so we continually drive the campaigning that we do in the Pacific. But through our foundational readiness program, making sure every individual is a master at their warfighting requirement, their craft, their job in the fight. We are responsive to whatever the Army needs. And while we are focused on a pacing threat, we're conscious that security requirements around the globe means the Army's got to be ready to go do what it's asked to do, wherever that may be.
And so those soldiers serving in Europe are paying attention, as I know you are, to that ongoing war in Ukraine, which has been the focus of much of my study the last 3 years. What lessons has I-Corps learned so far, and how are you implementing those lessons from the ongoing war in Ukraine? And before you answer that, this book may help you with that. So just take a quick skim while I say that I'm enormously proud to have been engaged for the last 3 years in an integrated research project at the Army War College, by which students analyze across what I call the battlefield operating system, what the Army now calls warfighting functions, lessons learned from the war in Ukraine. We just completed the 3rd year of that study. That's the book on the 1st year, and that's a gift to you, sir, from the Army War College to keep you awake on the long flight back home. And so, lessons learned from Ukraine for First Corps.
Just to confirm, you aren't going to charge me for it?
I'm not going to. You already.
Good.
You're a tax-paying member of the United States of America. You already paid for that.
One, I tell you, thanks for doing that. Army senior leadership's been very clear about making sure we are pulling lessons out of Ukraine and lessons even that we're learning here in the Central Command AOR. And pushing them across the Army as the character of war is evolving quickly. And things like the Harding Project, the weekly newsletters we get from USRA to help make sure we are applying and informing how we're going to do things in the Pacific is incredibly important. And so we are watching the ubiquitous use of sensors, from drones to satellites to radars. You are always in contact. What's that mean for you in terms of how you're going to operate coming off of 20 years on cops and fobs, fighting a non-nation state, militias that couldn't see you, that you were secure in your cops and fobs? What's that mean as we operate expeditionary in the Pacific? Means we got to start digging in. Means we got to do things, passive protective measures, and books like this put in our soldiers and small unit leaders' hands are incredibly important to make sure they are driving the reality of what needs to happen as we look at the fight as it's evolving today. And so the use of drones, an example is what we're learning from that. As the 25th ID I mentioned just finished up Salacanib and Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center exportable in the Philippines. They printed 100 first-person view drones to use as part of that exercise in the Philippines. So not only are we bringing the technology out, this Army Transformation Initiative we have is the best opportunity I've seen in the Army to drive needed change. You know, for 20 years we've been talking about if we could just get rid of that Humvee, or in the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, you get in it and you say, I can't believe we got this vehicle. It's hard to get in. It's hard to operate from. The view from it's in terms of the ability to look out the windows is hard, and you wonder, how did we get here? The initiative that that we were directed to do from OSD, that the Army leadership's driving here, is allowing us to shed and divest the outdated equipment, and from the bottom up generate requirements, feedback on the equipment we're now fielding. It is a great time to serve in our Army. As we are integrating this new technology, we're also adjusting our formations. And the Chief of Staff of the Army's charged us to do that and give the bottom-up feedback to multifunctional reconnaissance companies across our mobile brigade combat teams. We're looking at how to do that in striker formations right now, as the 1st Brigade, 2nd ID is now a striker transformation and contact formation. At higher levels, at the division level, we're looking at, hey, what does giving rockets to a division do in terms of changing the doctrine, the battlefield framework, giving them greater operational reach? What's that mean for the Corps and what we do? What's our battle space deep area look like? And with the tools we have from the multi-domain task force, which again extends the operational reach.
Maybe say a word about what an MDTF is.
Say again?
Maybe just say a couple words about what an MDTF is.
So the multi-domain task forces, there's 3 in our Army, soon to be 4. They are the new organization that we have built this organization while in flight, if you will, an airplane while in flight, with technology that includes a hypersonic weapon system, long-range hypersonic weapon system, mid-range system, and it's got also some HIMARS batteries. It's got integrated protection battery as well, or battalion. And so it's got protection, and then a bunch of non-lethal capabilities as well, cyber and space. So it can operate and create what we call joint all-domain operations, or pulses is what the joint, the name will evolve, and you'll watch this in the War College here, as we're now calling joint all-domain operations. But it really gives the Army the capability to impose costs, or to create the ability for the joint force to maneuver as it operates across all domains, space, cyber, maritime, air, and land. And so it's a really exciting time to be in the Pacific, because the first multi-domain task force was established at Joint Base Lewis McChord, where 1st Corps is headquartered, but it's operating continuously in the 1st Island chain right now, alongside the joint team that serves in the Indo-Pacific. And we're experimenting with the new ability to see further, affect further. What does that mean? We need within headquarters that drive convergence. By doctrine, the Army says the Corps headquarters is best positioned to integrate and drive convergence. So we've been deliberate about developing multi-domain effect cell. It's greater than just the fires targeting team, because you have to have experts that understand anti-access aerial denial capability China and adversaries has, which is very complex kill web that they have, that we need to disaggregate as we look at the different pieces that a multi-domain task force brings to counter and affect the A2AD capabilities that China has. And then how do we integrate with the Joint Task Force and then with the Joint Force Commanders team as we apply these resources that require authorities well above division and corps level, best to apply these effects at scope and scale, which is across the theater. And so the multi-domain command Pacific is something that we're directed to stand up right now. The planning team is in Hawaii. My deputy commanding general, Brigadier General Bernie Harrington, who commanded the first multi-domain task force before he came up to be the deputy, is helping lead that effort, as well as U.S. Army Pacific leadership, to figure out what that multi-domain command Pacific looks like, a division level entity, multi-star led, as we create it and get it into operation here in the coming year.
So very excited by what General George, not this General George, but the other General George from the West Point class of '88. It's confusing. But what the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Randy George, is doing with transformation in contact. is, I agree, one of the most exciting things that is happening in the Army right now. I think there's terrific potential for industry to help, both to help the Army understand what's possible and then to help the Army bring that to fruition. General George is absolutely dedicated to cutting through some of the procedures and processes that make it hard to field that stuff rapidly, and is working to get rid of some of the stuff that's standing in the way of that. So I'm excited about that work. That said, Ukraine is not Taiwan. And can you talk about some of the differences and what the differences mean to you?
Yeah,
And
certainly.
feel free to reference any recent publications on the subject.
Yeah, I may have read an article published yesterday morning by someone in this room, and there's some great points in there. So what's happening in Ukraine certainly is informing the character of war, but how it's applied in the Indo-Pacific environment at my level is what we're looking at. The islands in the Pacific are the most defendable terrain in the world. And then so the no man's land between trenches in Ukraine, between Ukrainian and Russian trenches, is real, and it's even the no man's land is in the interior lines for those formations because of what sensors do. In the Pacific, you have triple canopy jungle hiding in the Pacific, dispersed hiding and actually fortifying within the caves and the different rocks, which we experienced the Japanese doing as we attacked across the Pacific, is an opportunity for us as you look at defending, homeland defense for our partners there, sovereign defense for all of the partners that are worried about China and their insidious, aggressive activity in and around their countries. That said, the no man's land is the littoral. And so what the Army is developing in terms of our long range fires that can strike a ship while moving gives the opportunity for land forces to control straits from one or both sides of that strait to achieve or work towards maritime dominance from the land. The Navy is still just as important, but it gives the Army a capability and a key aspect for the Joint Team and Marines to affect the littorals, which become no man's land. So it becomes, I think we're seeing the character of war affect the emphasis is on defense as you look at the different technology that's out there, and certainly attackers coming from the sea or at a disadvantage as you look at the capabilities we're bringing to bear and what we can see at distance and then reach out and touch it at further distance. And so really interesting dynamic as we look at the lessons and applying them the right way. And not only lessons in Ukraine, but we're also seeing in CENTCOM. Give you an example is the TTPs for employing drones are changing literally daily in Ukraine, right? And so being adaptable, that's the other key part of this Army transformation initiative, is the mindset you have to have on the battlefield today is learning. Someone listed off the amount of degrees I have. That doesn't mean I'm smart. It means I have a lot of learning to do. But what I've learned as I've grown in the Army is reading books like this, staying plugged into things going on around you, where the enemy's going with their technology. Peter Singer published an article last month about what China is doing as they're learning lessons in the Ukraine, and the amount of energy they're putting into small UAS swarms and then counter small UAS and counter UAS is significant. They have completely energized and their focus on doing it faster than we are is real. And we've got to be conscious of that technological race. So staying smart and as a senior leader, learning about this technology can be daunting, but we absolutely have to learn about it as we integrate it in and then adapt. So learn, adapt, act, adapt again based on what's happened on the battlefield. Needs to be a continuous mindset. So a culture of transformation, as you will, more than just technology transformation. The organizations around it, then how we apply them, the doctrine that comes out of the war games that the War College does and operational units do are incredibly important, that there's a feedback loop and all those things are connected. So when we have the first fight, we prevail and we dominate. Historically, we have not done that in the Army, right? And so in being deliberate about it, it's another thing I'm really excited about because I got to tell you, we did really well evolving with certain books written about counterinsurgency over the 20-year war, and then we got the doctrine right, and now we're what I saw when I was in Operation Inherent Resolve over there in Iraq and Syria, we were very proficient at counterinsurgency. We've got to make sure we can turn quickly to large-scale combat operations against an enemy that's got deep magazines, that owns interior lines based on where they are in the Pacific and where we are, and optimize our land power network. That's our host nations and the armies we are going to fight alongside if we have conflict in the Pacific and anywhere. We don't go to war alone, and so the importance of our partners and allies can't be overstated.
And so the last two questions I have for you relate to those last two sentences you said. First, to adapt rapidly, I think you have to understand your enemy. When I was growing up in the Army and we had just one pure competitor, the Soviet Union, I could diagram a motorized rifle regiment and the attack down to the individual vehicle. Right? That's what they taught us. We are not seeing that same level of understanding of China, of the People's Liberation Army, the People's Liberation Army Navy. I can keep going with the horrible acronyms, right? But the Joint Staff has told the Army War College, all of the professional military education institutions, to ramp up the education on China, to understand the Chinese economy, Chinese society, the Chinese government, and in particular, how China fights. What are you seeing results of that in the field? Do your soldiers know what they need to know? Do your leaders know what they need to know about how China would fight?
They can always know more, and so we are deliberate as we operationalize the headquarters, that echelon, about getting updates on Chinese activity. They are doing rehearsals, continuously doing rehearsals to seize Taiwan. Their exercises, and Admiral Paparo said this publicly here at LandPac, that they continue to do rehearsals about how they will attack islands. And so we are continually doing exercises with that in mind as we create our plans and refine our plans for wherever crisis or conflict may occur to make sure we understand it. We need to do more though, because it's so complex. The technology that adversaries have now, learning how to disaggregate their kill web, if you will, because it is very complex, and technology is continuing to proliferate at scope and scale. And so being deliberate, I brought up the multi-domain effects cell. They weren't just planning and delivering effects in the deep area for the Corps. They were solving hard problems because we had intel experts in there, and it's going to take reps and sets, continuous reps and sets as we do this, and being deliberate about our knowledge gaps, if you will, about the adversaries, China, Russia, North Korea, and then attacking their gaps, if we will, because every military has them. Being deliberate about what those are, and so we got to do more there. We know that. We are starting that process, and I think the War Gaming Unified Pacific is what U.S. Army Pacific does annually. Your classes and integrating it into the professional military education is incredibly important, but units got to continue that development of our officer corps to really understand the enemy, know the enemy, so we can make sure we dominate quickly.
Wow. And my last question before we turn it over to the audience, you've mentioned the importance of allies and partners several times. The superpower of the Army War College, I don't know if this audience knows this, I didn't know it before I started teaching there 4 years ago, is the 75 or so allied and partner colonels and brigadier generals who attend the Army War College every year from 75 different countries around the globe. Countries send us their very best, and these officers add an extraordinary amount to the college. This year, I had the Lebanese officer, the Spanish officer, the Romanian officer, and most interestingly for you, the Indonesian officer. Indonesia also sent an officer to the Chinese War College. And the two of them were, of course, texting back and forth, understanding that China was reading every text. But fascinating to get that perspective of what our pacing challenge is doing in terms of professional military education of our allies and partners, and really helped me understand the tension that a country like Indonesia is under. wants to be a good partner and ally to the United States, but China's right next door. Chinese economy unbelievably important to Indonesia, and so that push pull, that tug of war that Indonesia and our other allies and partners in the region are under. Can you talk to that and talk to
Yeah.
the things you do to try to reassure our allies and partners that America is going to be there for them?
Yeah, first, a comment on the international students that go to the Army's professional military education program, and some of them start at West Point, actually. Many of them go on to become chiefs of army and chads in the Pacific. I don't have the exact number on the top of my head, but it's a significant amount. And so we're really, it's a really powerful program to create the trust that exists between our countries and certainly our armies, as they have experienced our education and are familiar with how we do things. The allies and partners, it is not either or for these countries. You know, you got Indonesia, you got Singapore. Several countries send leaders to both Chinese and U.S. Programs. And we are very deliberate about making sure as we engage with Army level staff talks or USAPAC to their Army staff talks, as we develop exercises, we are addressing needs that they have. And across the spectrum for our allies and partners, some are more modern than others. If you look at Australia right now, they're undergoing the largest modernization in recent history as they're bringing on new M1 tanks, brand new M1 tanks that just rolled off, long range fires, a new armored personnel carrier, motorized vehicle that they have. They are across the board driving modernization. You have others that don't have the resources that Australia has, and we're very conscious about helping them be able to optimize what they have and are deliberate about helping them think through if they ask us decisions they're making as they're looking at modernizing their forces based on budget constraints they have. And then as we look at interoperability with them, if we can't connect technically, because they don't have the same technical capabilities we have, we're deliberate on the procedural and the human interoperability to bridge those gaps. And then one aspect of as we incorporate lessons learned from the last 20 years is helping them fight and operate on their own. We'll be alongside them, but making sure they're thinking through the hard parts like sustainment. Right now, we have a tactical water purification system in the Philippines. General Galita, the chief of the Philippine Army, was very deliberate about saying we've got to get smarter at that because every time they have a typhoon, they're filling up aircraft with bottled water. Frankly, we were doing the same thing in COPS and FOBs. So the 25th ID is using their tactical water purification system for U.S. soldiers as well as Philippine soldiers as they did Balakatan and Salakanib. Which is the reality of expeditionary fighting. The luxuries of FOBs and COPS will be no more in large-scale combat operations based on what we're learning and how warfare's evolved. And so all of our countries have unique dynamics. Singapore is a very advanced country. They are developing their own technology. Their infantry vehicles, similar to the Stryker, is incredibly complex technically. And their formations are much different than our formations. The size of their platoons, the number of vehicles in their platoons versus U.S. Army. So everyone's got their own way to approach the fight, and we complement and provide insight through our security force assistance brigades that are over there continuously with them, with different countries, but also as we do these exercises with them during pathways.
Well, sir, I've got more questions, but I think this is a pretty special audience we've got gathered here today. Ladies and gentlemen, questions for General McFarlane?
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Ross Duckworth. I'm retired from the United States Marine Corps. Thank you both, especially you, sir, for taking your time to come and talk to us today. We know that it's not as though you don't have anything to do in your free time. And Professor Nagl, you've had a fascinating career, and you're well known to most of us. And before you're teaching at the present boys' school, you were at another boys' school.
I was, sir.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Sir, I have two questions. The first one has no answer. And if you want to skip it and go to the second one, which is much easier, that's okay. You addressed this a great deal in your remarks. We used to have something called 2MRC, and I think most of the people here know what I'm talking about. And then 2 medium-sized regional conflicts was tested for the first time 20 years ago, and it was a challenge. Today, the world is a tinderbox. We have China. I don't need to go on about that. We have a commitment to Korea. We have a commitment to Japan. China now views Africa as an open menu. Russia, I don't need to explain. And as of this week, all sources are agreed that Israel is about to attack Iran. And we're shutting down our embassy in Iraq because of that. Would you care to comment on how we're going to deal with this, how we're going to prioritize, other than reinstituting a draft and having 30 million people in the Army? We can't be everywhere at the same time. Certainly your priority would be your command, the Pacific, but would you care to comment on how we're going to do this as far as prioritizing? And Professor Nagl, you might have a comment on this as well. If you wish to stay away from that very loaded political question, I'll ask a simpler one. Guam. We now have a permanent presence in Guam, which we're building up. It's the first new permanent force in the Pacific in I don't know how long. Would you comment on how that came to be and how it fits in with your command? Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Well, first, Guam is where the homeland begins. And so being deliberate about how we're going to defend Guam and what that provides us to defend the continental United States is significant. And so we're very deliberate as we look at how we're protecting Guam and then how we integrate that into the greater part of defense of the United States. And then the other part that Guam provides as we project power, it's another spot along the way towards the first island chain, closest spot, obviously, because it's close to the first island chain. So we've had forces on Guam for a long time, just small amount of forces. You know, the air base, the Air Force base there, as well as a Navy-led command on Guam. I think they just changed command here last month to Navy Admiral, a one-star Admiral. And so we are now building it up with more air defense capability. I think the Marines had built a lot of barracks there. I'm not sure how many they're taking in there. But it's an incredibly strategic location, as it was during World War II. It's just as strategic now as you think about the operational reach or the capabilities of threats around the globe to reach the continental United States. So that from First Corps perspective, as we look at our operational role, Guam is always something we're talking about. Sometimes we go to there to operate. That's a key node for us. Other times it's not. Depends on the different operations we're doing.
You want me to take the first one?
Yeah.
Sorry, first, you know, Semper Fi, trust a Marine to ask a hard question. There was a terrific piece of work done by two people who many in the room will know. Jane Harmon was a longtime member of Congress from California. She liked to describe herself as the Congresswoman from Boeing, Boeing the major employer in her district. Eric Edelman, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Many of you will know Eric, one of the great, my opinion, great strategic thinkers in our country at this time. Harmon and Edelman led a commission called the Commission on National Strategy that issued a report last summer, congressionally mandated, that said two things. I'll paraphrase. America is a greater danger than it's been since 1945. And America is not prepared for the risks it faces. And Harmon and Edelman then recommended, in response to those two facts, an increase in the defense budget of $500 billion a year. The 7-page executive summary of this report, sadly, it came out in July of an election year, of a presidential election year. Some things were going on. It didn't get the attention it should have. But that 7-page executive summary, Commission on National Strategy, Harmon Edelman, I can't recommend highly enough. That sort of increase in defense spending would get us back up to about 5% of GDP on defense, which is what this administration is asking the rest of the world to do correctly, in my eyes. This room, there are many people in the room, sir, Sergeant Major, me, right, who remember when we used to spend 5% of GDP on defense. That would allow us an active duty army of 750,000, which is what we had when I came into the service in 1988. We are at greater danger today than we were then. And so I think America and the world are dramatically underinvesting in national security right now. I think Europe is finally starting to catch up to that fact. We're seeing Japan, Australia dramatically increase their expenditures. I see this as this is a trend that is not going to go away. The world is not going to get easier. I'm very concerned about. General Kurilla was supposed to testify before Congress today. That was canceled because of the ongoing events in the Middle East. I think the world is about to get even more dangerous, and so I think, sadly, the defense business is going to be a growth industry for the next several decades.
Thank you both. Outstanding.
Sir. Oh,
I know. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. General McFarlane, especially, thank you very much. Kind of building off a lot of what you talked to, working with partner nations, what have you seen have been the biggest challenges, biggest hurdles in working with partner nations in terms of technology gaps? Looking across .mil-PF, obviously with the military aspect and the advantage we most likely have over all of our, allies in the area. How have your soldiers overcome that? And what more can we do to support that?
and who are you, sir?
Sorry, Alex Moore, Palantir Technologies, former lieutenant under, at the time, Major Nagl, and then also to a captain with Lieutenant Colonel Nagl.
How'd that work out for you?
It was great. Definitely
Yeah,
best
yeah.
part of my career by far. Learned everything I know from this man. So if my
He's
question
still-
doesn't
he-
make sense, you can blame it on him.
He's
or
still in
head
therapy.
injuries.
The technology challenge to go truly interoperable in terms of we are connecting our systems to them. So, for instance, the common operational picture, we use ours on a classified system. Many countries we cannot plug into their systems because of the risk of doing that. And so, creating bridges or using systems that are unclassified, so sensitive, but unclassified and encrypted, SBUE, are helping us do that. And with the Philippines as example, we are using a common operational picture that both brigades were looking at the same common operational picture as we just operated with 25th ID in the Philippines. We continue to look for innovative ways to do that. Look at the information exchange requirements and how we can get to the best possible level to where we can connect. And if we can't, we use things like we do swivel chair procedures to help bridge those gaps. The other part is countries are, buying different weapons from different countries, understanding before crisis or conflict, the different types of systems, classes of supply, common ammunition we may use if we have common systems and that we don't use, and understanding if we're using a combined joint supply chain through our theater distribution nodes that we're setting up across the Pacific, how we organize those, and then how we distribute things that may be of need to all involved nations in whatever it is we're doing. And so it first of all takes reps and sets to understand that, and getting to know and understand each other. Human interoperability, the terms we use, the tactical and operational terms we use is just an example. Different countries use different words, but then the procedural ways we bridge sharing targets so they can hit targets with the systems they have, with the capabilities or range that they have. And then understanding if they have sensors that we need that we can't connect, how do we push that data over? Some countries are using now FATADs, which significantly helps if you talk about kill change from sensor to shooter. That's a key one. But when we can't use that, or they can't use FATADs, what are we using in the meantime? And so you mentioned like the hypersonic glide capability. Japan just fielded 2 battalions, example, earlier this week. I saw a news article about that. So every country's moving out with the capability to do that. But these exercises like Yamasakura with Japan was our warfighter at the core level. So the premier warfighting exercise from Mission Command Training Program for the Army, we did in Japan in the Ground Combat Command headquarters to try and drive a practice set with them to bridge gaps that we know exist as we do this. And then as we field new capability, we continue to integrate that capability into our exercises and to see where we can connect. So it's a continuous effort where the feedback loop is real as we work with these different countries.
When I was at USAPAC last summer, I saw a security classification I'd never seen before. Right, secret, no foreign, releasable, Five Eyes, and Japan. And there's a Japanese lieutenant colonel taking the course who serves on the USAPAC staff. So I want to think like a historian for just a second. I've been doing, as I think you have, sir, a bunch of reading about the war in the Pacific and the extraordinary success of the United States in the wake of World War II in creating the partnerships we have around the globe, but in particular with Germany and Japan, our former bitter enemies, and turning those two countries into, in many ways, the pillars of security and stability in Europe and in Asia is an absolutely extraordinary work of generations of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And we talked about this a little bit before. I think will have an important deterrent effect on China. Sadly, it has not had the same effect on Vladimir Putin. More questions? Sir?
Darrell Lewis, Indo-Pacific J85. So
Are you a spy?
I think I'm a bit loud for that. So I'm in Science Technology Division. We just came out of PAC Century this week, and certainly to the points you were just discussing. I mean, we're doing everything we can, I know, to integrate more countries in. And Japan was participating in our S&T board. What I want to ask about, when we get these new technologies that we're delivering, that Palantir and all these other companies are delivering, we're really good at throwing out a new widget. When we get those widgets, what is missing? What do we need to actually plan for ahead of time so that we're ready when these widgets get fielded?
Yeah, I would say, in my recommendation to all partners that I talk to, leaders of the different levels of the armies, is before you ask what can that weapon system do, ask how it connects, because this technology race, sometimes it's a great Oklahoma land grab instead of everyone driving down the same road to get to the spot as quick as possible. And so we'll field stuff that can't connect. And so if you want to ask up front, what needs to happen is understand how it connects. Data rights, can it connect to the Indo-Pacific multinational network that is sorely needed as we look at the mission partner environment we're trying to have to integrate all the partners that are out there in a way that we can do so at the right classification level for each participating nation, to ensure everyone is informed and understands first and then can act first. And so that's the one big thing, is making sure you understand how it can connect. Because if you're buying an exquisite weapon system that can't connect, it'll be sitting on the coastal, hilltop, looking for stuff that someone will have to feed the location, and it can't slew to it right away to affect it, for example. So you want to make sure it can get fed the data and can react quickly. And that's just an example with long range fires for you. But and you see that continues. You see that within our military sometimes too, as different services, the joint team making sure we can connect. So one of the things you asked about is how do we ensure we're ready to contribute to the joint force and have the agility needed across the expansive Indo-Pacific. Every time we do exercises, a key aspect of them, this sounds simple, but it's harder than you think, is to connect to the joint team that's in around us. Because some of these exercises have evolved from stovepipe component exercises to now they are truly joint. So connecting and sharing data with ships off the shore from an Army headquarters during Cobra Gold, for example, to the Marine Amphib team that's executing the Amphib exercise, to the BCT headquarters that's in Lopburi, Thailand during Cobra Gold as an example, making sure we can do that. And then with our Thai partners who are integrated with us there at wherever the command post is for the exercise. Hey, it's the right Hawaiian uniform. Why are you in town here? Or are you just... Great. So I'll probably want to talk to you after that.
Good morning, sir. My name is George Topic. I work at something called the Center for Joint and Strategic Logistics, supporting the J4 and OSD sustainment. I was interested in hearing from a First Corps perspective about, you've alluded to supply chains and their global nature, as well as other aspects of sustainment. Especially as we look at new technology coming in, making sure that there is sustainment for these capabilities. What I'm interested in, though, from First Corps perspective, how you look at commercial support to military operations, and how, because they do touch you, as you well know, since 75% of our support comes from the commercial sector. How do you train and exercise with this in First Corps, and what might industry be able to do to help facilitate better integration with these capabilities? Thanks.
Great question. We were just talking about that before we came in here. In terms of commercial shipping and the huge requirement on commercial shipping for operations in the Pacific. And so we're very deliberate as we do these rotations. Sometimes we'll put them on equipment on civilian ships. Sometimes we'll put them on military ships as we're pushing it across the Pacific to Korea and the different exercises. And there's different time standards we use for planning. So we're attuned and understand the different time standards, but the scope and scale for power projection in a large scale operation, either in crisis or going to conflict, is significant. And so we do use planning tools, but we're exercising all that stuff constructively, because the capacity in the commercial sector is we don't routinely do large because of the cost, right? And so we've had to meter based on resources available what we are sending via ship for exercises versus what we fly in. And so we continuously talk about that. The tools at the Indo-PACOM J4, we push down to us, the AI tools to help us see and understand what is going where and what's the quickest way to get things from one point in the Pacific to another. If it's intra-theater versus inter-theater is all part of that dynamic. And so I didn't give you a wholesome answer in terms of my personal view on commercial shipping. I just tell you, I know it's incredibly important in terms of SDDC capability, which we talked about right before we came in here. And we need a lot more of it at scale as we look at the Pacific.
Let me say a sentence on that, George, if I can. There's a terrific piece in the Atlantic Monthly that I commend to all of you called "The Crisis of American Shipbuilding." The United States of America currently produces 0.3%, not 3%, 0.3% of the tonnage of shipping in the world, produced in the world every year. China produces 60%. So the crisis of American shipbuilding in the Atlantic. Phillips O'Brien is, in my eyes, one of the most interesting military historians working today. His terrific book is about a decade old now, How the War Was Won, looks at World War II in both Asia and Europe, and makes the argument that it was America's shipbuilding and airplane producing capability that won both the war in both theaters. A note that we produced 250,000 airplanes during the 5 years of World War II. And so we are vastly short of the defense industrial base capability we need to think about winning a protracted war against one near peer, much less, to my Marine friend, much less two. A lot of work to be done.
Well, let's give our panelists here a round of applause for a tremendous discussion. Any closing comments or?
Yeah, first, to AUSA, these things are powerful. We talked about the importance of sharing lessons learned, updating all the stakeholders that are interested on progress with our transformation and where we need to go and where we need to increase things. So thanks for hosting this. And then to the professor, since I first bumped into him in the hallways of the Pentagon right after he published a book that was super helpful for our efforts in the fight for the last 20 years. My appreciation, not only for what your service and what you did while wearing uniform, but what you're driving to develop the Army's future leaders at the Army War College. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Two quick things. First, I think this panel has been a terrific example of a maxim you may have heard: those who can do, and those who can't teach. First. And second, again, my Marine friend noted the tensions rising in the Middle East. I just ask that we all remember our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are in harm's way in CENTCOM and around the globe at this time of extraordinary challenge. Thank you all for being here and for being committed to the security of America and our allies and partners around the globe.
All right, another round of applause, please. Be- Before I let you go, I wanted to inform you of a couple of upcoming events with AUSA. There is something going on this weekend that you may have heard about, the Army's 250th birthday. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on down here, at the National Mall, but AUSA is running all of the Army birthday celebration events in Philadelphia this weekend. So starting tomorrow at Valley Forge to Saturday down at Independence Hall and concluding on Sunday with church services, our Penn Franklin chapter is running that with AUSA's national support. So if you don't want to struggle to get downtown for the National Mall, come up to Philly and you'll see the Army's birthplace and the birthplace of our nation. So that's going on this weekend. Join us back here at AUSA headquarters on the 25th of June. We have another coffee series featuring General Chris Donahue, Commanding General of U.S. Army Europe and Africa. Same time, same place. And then you don't want to miss our inaugural Land Euro this summer going on in Wiesbaden. Very similar to Land Pack, smaller, very high level strategic, phenomenal program that we're building in conjunction in partnership with U.S. Army Europe and Africa. That's 16 and 17 July in Wiesbaden, Germany. You can register today. And it's never too early to mark your calendars for the AUSA annual meeting. Join us back at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, 13 to 15 October. Very exciting year to celebrate not only 250 years of Army history, but we're also celebrating AUSA's 75th anniversary as well. So you can get information on any of these events at ausa.org. And finally, we want to thank you all who support us with your membership. We're a membership-based organization. Membership absolutely matters, and you help us support the Army. So thank you again for attending, and have a great